Hello and welcome to Cardboard History. I'm David, and today I want to look back at 2025 and share some goals that I have coming up in 2026. Now, it has been a while. I think my last video may have been my national recap, or I think I did possibly one video after that. But life's been crazy. So before I get into the review and look ahead, I want to share some life updates. For those of you that have watched my recent video at the National, we just had a baby in July, and life with a newborn is crazy and wild, but we're loving it. You also may notice that I'm in a different room. We moved houses, and that means a new card room / office, and that's what is around me here. It's still getting set up. The shelves are kind of in chaos, but we're getting settled in. So that was around September time that we moved. And then just a few weeks ago, I graduated with my PhD. So dissertation complete and graduation done. So some big life events that have sort of precluded me from making any videos. I've continued on in the hobby, but put the hobby of YouTube to the side for a little while. And it will probably remain off to the side or be something infrequent as far as creating content. But I still enjoy watching many of your videos. For those of you that make videos, and it's a way that I like staying connected with the community of YouTube. So that being said, some of my plans for this upcoming year, thus far, I am planning on going to Strongsville or Independence or whatever the show is called now, wherever it is. That's in the plans right now, still trying to work out some details with some other family plans, but hoping to be there for at least one of the days. And National's still in the plans for now, but that's a ways away. So we'll see what happens when it comes. But I want to take some time and look at the goals that I set last year. I went back and looked at the video I created in January of 2025 and went back and looked at some of my spreadsheets. And the interesting thing, which if you've ever created goals for any area of life, you know this, if you keep the goals in front of you, you're more likely to achieve them. Well, I kept my goals in front of me for what progress I wanted to make on some sets. And I also had a list of cards that were my target for the year, and I did not keep those in front of me. So you can guess which one I did better on. But we'll start by looking at some different projects that I was working on this year. So I'm going to share my screen, and this gives you an idea. So starting with this first category here, the Topps base. This is my Cubs base collection. It was complete at the beginning of last year, but there were 25 new cards that came out in Series 1 and Series 2. So I added those to my collection to keep that project at 100% complete. Then the next category is the Ken Burns collection. If you've seen some of my videos before, one of the big projects that I'm working on is trying to collect a card for every person that is mentioned in the Ken Burns documentary and accompanying book. So that comes out to 462 in the first 9 innings total cards, and my goal for last year was to add 69 cards to that set, and I well exceeded that. I added 108. So this was just a project that I really love and enjoy doing, and I went on a couple of buying strings to pick up some of the lower value cards. There's a lot of $2, $3, $4 cards in this project of some lesser known people who played a significant role in a game or in a series or something like that, that have an important place in the history of baseball, but their cards aren't at the level of a Mickey Mantle or a Ty Cobb. So I'm at 52%. I'm over halfway complete with that project. Another one of my goals for last year was to complete my T206 Cubs team set, and I was able to complete that at Strongsville by picking up the Mordecai Brown, which was the last one of his cards I needed. So all 37 Cubs have been collected, and I'm looking at them all right here in beautiful SGC holders. So that was a great thing to accomplish. And shortly before the National, I also completed my Cubs 40s and 50s Bowman run, which there's 114 total Cubs in those sets running from 49 to 55. Then probably up there with the Ken Burns collection is the T206, the Monster as I have it listed here, the master set. I'm not sure why this is pulling 519. It should be 520. My goal for the year was to pick up 31, and this was one of those goals that I was a little bit away from hitting in mid-December, and I reached out to a guy in a Facebook group and was able to work out a deal to pick up 9 T206 commons, and that shot me past my goal and set me up well going into next year. So those are the first 5 projects that I completed what I set out to do. Next up, this one, I only got 64% of the way there, but it was a project that I decided somewhat through the year that I wanted to set off to the side and not focus on so much, and that is completing all of the Topps update sets for the Cubs as well. So that would be things like Topps Traded in the 80s, and even going back to the 70s, as well as updates and highlights, and it kind of has gone through different names throughout the years. I wanted to put that together to go with the top base set. So the 1,970 Cubs Topps base cards would go with the additional 373 updates for really what would be a complete Topps flagship set. Most of that project is just buying team sets. It's not quite as enjoyable as picking up individual cards here and there, and it's something I still want to complete, so that way I have it all together. But I decided not to focus on it as much as I originally set out, trying to pick up 200 cards, and I got 64% of the way there. Then next up is my Cubs Gold Parallel team set. So starting in 2001, and I go back to the Topps Gold from the early 90s as well. I include that. But there's almost 1,000 gold parallels, and those are always starting in 2001 numbered to whatever year it is. So the cards from this year were numbered to 2025. So that's a binder set that I'm trying to put together. I think it's just fun to look through the binder and see all of the cards all serial numbered. So my goal for this year was 72, and I ended up picking up 93. And there's a handful of cards that I want to target there that I've picked out that are a little bit more key cards to the Cubs set, like the Kyle Schwarber rookie. Next up is the Topps Venezuelan set. So beyond the vintage Topps run, there's also the Venezuelan cards that were produced to be distributed in Venezuela. And there's 104 Cubs in that set, and this year I was able to pick up an additional 28. So hoping to pick up a few more this year as well. Now these are the ones. The red stands out, doesn't it? It was maybe July or June timeframe. These were 2 more projects that I just decided I don't think I want to pursue these at this time. So I've kept what I've made progress-wise, but wanting to put together the Topps Chrome team set for the Cubs, as well as the O-Pee-Chee. The O-Pee-Chee is kind of like the Venezuelan, but there's a lot more there, and it's a lot more of buying team sets. And it's just not as enjoyable, and I decided rather than trying to meet some goal that I'm not enjoying, I would just shift my focus. And then the last project, my goal was to complete the Topps Chrome Platinum Anniversary, which they started doing a few years ago with Chrome versions of starting in 1952 with that set. And they've done it for 53 and 54. Then last year they didn't do 55. And there's been, from what I can tell online, it still looks like they're wanting to do 2025 Topps with the Chrome Platinum Anniversary versions of the 1955 Topps cards. So I would like to put together the Cubs team run, but I have not seen that set to be released. They might be doing away with it. There's just no news on that front. So those were my goals. Another goal that I had was for what is the my type card collection. So this is something that's a little bit of a side project of wanting to pick up different type cards through the pre-war and post-war. And so I went through and identified the number of sets that have cards that have Cubs players in them. And for pre-war, there's 159 different sets that I identified that have a Cubs player in them. Some of these are, going to be really hard where there's only, 1 or 2 copies of each card available. but I wanted to try to round out my pre-war and post-war collection by picking up different types. So my goal for this year was to pick up 10, and for pre-war, and I only got 6. I didn't focus on it too much. So this is something that going into next year, I might want to be a little bit more intentional about. I did identify a few sets like the Ramley. I was able to pick up a Ramley this year, and that was one of the sets that I really wanted represented in my collection, as well as the DeLong Gum. Those were probably the two biggest sets that are missing from my collection that I was able to add this year. And then for post-war, I got 16 out of my goal of 20. And then there's the post-war others, which were things like photos, postcards, pins, and things like that. I added another 7 just from things that I found at shows and that caught my eye and my interest. So this is something I want to continue sort of tracking going forward, but hasn't been a huge focus of my collection as much as the Ken Burns collection or my T206 set. Now, I also mentioned that last year I set goals of which cards I wanted to pick up, and I made a video about it, and I didn't write them down anywhere. And so when I went back and looked at the video, I wrote down what the cards were. And I had 15 cards that were on my list of cards I wanted to target for the year. And realistically, I was thinking maybe 3 or 4 of these cards I would pick up. But I wanted to have enough variety that I wasn't being pigeonholed into just picking up a certain card and then getting one that didn't fit or wasn't quite right. And then I had 3 more cards that I listed as aspirational cards because they either haven't come up for sale in a couple years, or when they have, they've been in high grades that are outside the range of my budget, or too low a grade where I didn't want to get one in that condition. So how did I do? Of the 15 cards that I said I wanted to target for 2025, I picked up 0. That was a little discouraging, but there's a big reason for that. And probably the biggest reason is this card right here. This was not on my list to pick up, but if you saw my national recap, this is the T206 Ty Cobb that I picked up at the National. And this ate up most of my national budget, but I was very happy with that. So the 15 cards that were on my list, which included things like the T205 Christy Mathewson, or the 53 Satchel Paige, or like T206 Keeler, Crawford, Waddell, and McGraw. Those went on the back burner when I picked this up. And just so excited to add this that I am okay with the fact that I did not get any of the cards on my target list. Now, I also mentioned that there were 3 aspirational cards. And of those cards, I saw 2 come up for sale. One of them I saw at the National, and the price on it was just too high. It's a rarer card, doesn't come up very often. And I talked to the dealer about it, and he didn't have much room to move on it. And I put it kind of in my back pocket. This was before I had picked up the Cobb, and I told myself, if I don't get the Cobb, I might go back. And that was the Fan Craze Ban Johnson. That's his rookie card and one of his only cards. So that one got away, but I ended up with the Cobb, so I was happy. The other one that I picked up is a new pickup for me. And I haven't shared this yet, and it's one that I have been looking for 3 years. And it was a card that was on my list, and it's been my number 1 target for probably 2 years, and I have not seen one come up for sale. So when this came up for sale back in October, around there, sometime between September and November, I jumped on it right away. I recognized the seller on eBay, so I reached out to him off of eBay, and we were able to work out a deal. And I will share that card now. But before I do, this is a cachet from the Centennial, the opening of the Baseball Hall of Fame with first day stamps. And the card is behind this, but I saw this at the St. Louis show that I went to earlier this month, or last month in December. and thought this was really cool. I'm really looking for, there's a postcard that features Abner Doubleday on this, and that's part of my Ken Burns collection. But this one mentions Civil War General Abner Doubleday, the inventor of baseball, which was the story that was told at the opening of the Hall of Fame, even though it is purely myth. So I was happy to pick this up because it mentions Doubleday, but I'm still looking for the postcard that has his picture on it. So this is the card that I picked up. It is the Buckner Gold Coin Billy Sunday. So Billy Sunday plays an important part for me in sort of crossover of my interest. He started his career off as a baseball player, and he played for the Chicago Cubs at the time, which were the Chicago White Stockings. So he played alongside men like Cap Anson, and what he is more known for is what he did after baseball. When he left baseball, he became an itinerant preacher, meaning that he traveled around and held tabernacle meetings. He would hold meetings in tents that were constructed, and he would preach multiple days in a row to crowds of thousands upon thousands of people. And he was one of the most prolific preachers. I mentioned I just finished my PhD. My PhD is in biblical theology, and that's really probably my largest passion is my faith and serving in my church and living for the glory of God. And that is, for me, what trumps everything. But I love baseball too. And for me to have a baseball card that portrays an image of a man who would go on to preach the word of God to hundreds of thousands of people in his lifetime is just so exciting for me. I've been looking for this card for a long time, and it just does not come up. It is from 1887, and this copy, I'll take it out of this, is pretty rough. The back is skimmed, and it's missing a little piece right here, but I got this for quite a bit less than what I had budgeted. And maybe someday, if another nicer copy comes up, I'll upgrade. But this was just a card I wanted to have in my collection. Definitely an own appeal card that is special because it's mine, and it's one that I have been searching for a while. So I'm planning to get this sent off to SGC so it will look nice with the black holder. But that is something for this year. But that was, I think that might for me top the Ty Cobb, because at pretty much any show you go to, there's going to be T206 Ty Cobbs. But this card is one, there's only 9 copies graded, and the last one that sold, it has been about 5 years. So yeah, that's something that I'm just really excited about. And now that I've got the room finally set up, I'm happy to have that up on my desk so I can see it. It's been packed away in a box or a crate for several months after I got it. So that was 2025. That's the recap. Let's look ahead to 2026. So I decided not to do the same thing I did last year. Last year, I picked out some cards I wanted to target and didn't get any of them. This year, I'm just going to stick with looking at what projects I want to make progress on. So for me, that's starting with the Ken Burns collection. And I'll come back to this over here. So currently I'm at 239. So my goal for this year is to add 61 cards to that. So that will be, let's see, that will take me to 300, which will be about 65% complete. This is a long-term project, not something I want to rush through. So this will get me a little bit of a step closer. I've broken down in a separate spreadsheet that I'm tracking this cards by price level, and I'm targeting a certain number of cards at each price level to try to keep it somewhat spread out, so that way I don't just buy all of the lower end cards and then I'm left with cards that are not attainable. But I'd like to save up and pick up at least one significantly big card for this project. The next big project that I mentioned, probably Ken Burns collection is my project number 1, and then the T206, the Monster, is project 1A or project 2, just close behind. Again, it's a long-term project. I don't have the budget to just go out and pick up a complete set or to put it together within a year. So last year my goal was 31, and this year my goal is going to be 36. So I think I've found some avenues that I can pick up some cards a little bit cheaper than what I have in my budget, and I'm hoping to take advantage of that, and then also pick up some of the harder cards to get. So those would be things like the Southern Leaguers. I had it written down here somewhere. Yeah, so I'd like to add 5 of the Southern Leaguers to my collection, and then 10 of the 100 rarest and 10 Hall of Famers for the T206 set. So those are things that I'm targeting for this year. Beyond that, I want to continue making some progress on the Venezuelans. For this year, pick up another 14 to get me to 70 total, which puts me at about 77, or another 14 would get me at 80, which would be about 77% of completion. And then also pick up some more of the gold parallels, add another 79 to get me up to 600, which is 60% complete on that. And then I do want to keep making some progress on the Topps update, so I'd pick up a couple team sets and try to get up to add another 100 cards to that, so that way in the next 3 years or so I can complete that project. But not going to be a huge focus, just when those show up and they're available, I'll do that. And then I also, like I mentioned, want to pick up some type cards to round out and have a broader collection and more representation. So that, again, I'm going to try to get 10 new pre-war cards from sets that I don't have represented in my collection. So those are my goals for 2026. Mostly I just want to enjoy it. Another big goal, which I didn't mention and I didn't have written down, but I've spent some time working on today, is my goal for 2026 is I want to have fewer cards at the end of 2026 than I have right now. So what does that look like? It seems weird as a collector to say my goal is to have less of a collection, but I do want to do some more consolidating. So today I spent some time putting together a rough count of the cards that I have in my collection, and I came roughly with a number around 33,000 cards, which is insane and crazy and too much for what I like. And I broke down these cards to say these are cards that are actually part of my core collection. There's about 5,000 cards. About half of those are just the Cubs Topps run, but cards that are in my core collection that I do not want to get rid of. And then below that I had cards that are part of different projects or things that I'm working on that are important to me that I'd like to keep, and there was around another 7,000 in there. But then beyond that, the rest, probably 20 to 30 or 25,000 cards, or cards that, are either things that I just held on to that were given to me, that I bought a giant lot and I've just been holding on to a 5,000 count box of cards from the 80s. And I want to sort through those and get rid of the duplicates. And so my goal is to get rid of cards that don't fit in my collection and to be more focused this year on what cards I am picking up. So I started a tracker that I will keep track of which cards I sell or give away as far as the quantity. And my goal is to be sitting here in January 1st, 2027 with fewer than 33,000 cards. So we'll see how that goes, but I think that will be a good collection to keep me focused and not keep adding things that are outside of my scope. So that has been my 2025 year in review, as well as my 2026 goals and aspirations. Beyond just specific cards that I'm collecting, I am really looking forward to Strongsville, to seeing some good friends and spending time talking about baseball cards and life. And I hope if you're there, I'll get the chance to interact, and same for the National. Those are two things that I look forward to every year, and I am really looking forward to them again this year. So if you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Leave a comment, and thank you for watching. This has been Cardboard History.